Hello, and welcome to the cutest podcast in all of Wraith. Welcome to Pitch Perfect. My name is Kiki, and of course we have our other co-host, Elaine.
Hi.
And today, we are joined by a very special guest. Today we have Scott Mines. They're a flesh and blood caster for the European and, I guess, international kind of scene. Also a writer for TCG Player across multiple games. Scott, would you like to say a little bit about yourself? Tell us who you are.
Sure, I'm thoroughly unexciting. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Howdy, my name is Scott, also sometimes known as Howdy Minds across the internet. I'm a bit of a card game nerd, as you may have guessed by the fact that I write a lot for a living on a site called TCG Player that you may or may not have heard of at some point in time. If it contains cardboard squares, I probably play it at some point. I've done everything in the kind of industry from running local game stores and their events to running Comic-Cons to being a pro player to what I do now. So yeah, I've kind of lived and breathed this stuff for a while and haven't got sick of it yet. So I guess I'm staying. Sorry about that.
No, we are more than happy to have you both here on the podcast and in our community of flesh and blood players. Speaking of flesh and blood players, that's what we're here to kind of talk about. We are Flesh and Blood pods, and we generally tend to play the game a lot more recently. So here we have our usual segment, the Our Weeks in Flesh and Blood kind of situation. Why did I add situation to that? Elaine, would you like to get us started off?
Yeah, this week in Flesh and Blood, since the last time we recorded, I have just been jamming CC. I played in an RTN, which is the RTN I was talking about last episode that comes out today, the day we're recording, so Scott, you have not heard it, but our listeners probably, if they listened to it, would have heard it by now. I did not qualify for nationals, but I don't know, I was really proud of myself. I think I played really well. The games that I lost, I think I still played well. It just kind of like came down to some bad luck, maybe a few misplays here or there, but overall I think it was a really fun, great experience, and it did not knock my confidence at all. So it's a good week in Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, for sure. You were playing so much last week. I don't know how you did it.
Yeah.
As someone that plays like 5 games maybe a week. Scott, would you like to tell us about your week in Flesh and Blood? Do you have any chances to play or write or talk or involve yourself in the game?
It's been a surprisingly busy week for Flesh and Blood, actually. I think I can talk about this because I think the articles will be out before this podcast is. I guess I don't ruin myself. I was recently contacted to...
It'll probably be
like... Yeah, okay.
That's because it'll probably be like...
Yeah, it'll be fine. The NDAs aren't real, don't worry about it. I was recently lucky enough to be contacted by LSS to write a few guest articles for World Tour London. So I've been working away on those, which is going to be really fun. There's one coming out about who is turning up, which is going to be great. It's just like a nice little chat about players and staff at LSS and artists and cosplayers and everything else. So we get this kind of big global image of who's going to be there. And the other one was kind of what to expect. So, in a literal sense of, what's the format going to look like, what's going on. And the other one was more just kind of what to expect from an event of that size for maybe some players who haven't had the privilege of doing that before. Beyond that, I was kind of lucky to do most of my RTN work in the first few weeks, so I have been mostly dialed in and preparing for that same Pro Tour, because I have a Pro Tour to play. So I should probably figure out what deck I'm playing and try not to suck at a card game for a change, as opposed to talking about it. So vaguely working on that and seeing how that goes. How about you, Kiki? How's your week of Flesh and Blood?
Oh, that's beautiful. Y'all are preparing for Roach Nationals. I won an armory.
Ayo, let's go.
That's about it. It's a huge deal for me, because I think I've won one armory in the last, at most one armory in the last 2 years, but this is the first one I actually went undefeated in as well.
Ooh.
So yeah, it all happened because my friend was like, I need to borrow a Dragon Scalar Flight Path. I'm like, just take my whole Cinder deck, use that, don't even build it. You can just play my deck. I'll play Prism, I guess. And then turns out she's okay right now. So I'm very happy with where Flesh and Blood is right now. I love the idea of Viserai. I hate the rune chants destroying my angels. So I'm in a good place. I'm pretty happy. And yeah, I got nothing special in my promo packs, but that's okay because I got first place, and my pride is all that matters in this scenario.
We take those. We absolutely take those.
Yeah, it was a very kind of, I don't know. I kind of destroyed my teammate in the finals. He wasn't too happy as Aurora, as my Angels came in for 7 and were giving me spectral shields, and I stopped all the Channel Lightning Valley attack triggers, and yeah, it was great for me.
Once Prism starts snowballing, she's hard to stop. So love to see it.
Exactly.
Oh.
Okay, discussion time. We're not actually here to listen to me go on about Prism for like 19 hours. We're here to talk to you, Scott.
Oh, okay. Someone told me, but sure, I guess I can prepare.
Okay. We'll start easy, I reckon, with these questions. What does Flesh and Blood mean to you? The game, specifically, not the literal phrase.
That could have taken a very dark turn, yeah. I mean, we'll start simple, they say, and it's like maybe the biggest question of all. Like it's hard to define, I think, everything that Flesh and Blood means to me at this point, because it's meant so many different things at different stages of my own personal journey. I think the best way I can sum it up is it's just the kind of card game I was looking for to follow my own mission statement. It's always been about making sure that people have a place to play and have, you know, a welcoming space, and nothing embodies like everyone's right to have a place at the table more than a game of Flesh and Blood. It's a game that we play in person, it's a game that we celebrate in person, and it kind of cultivates all my favorite things about large gatherings and celebrations of people's, you know, effort and the like, and that's just so hard to put into words, which is really bad for someone who's paid to write words. So that should really tell you about how hard it is to explain. But Flesh and Blood is its own kind of magic. It's just very hard to fathom because of a card game shouldn't be able to achieve everything that it has, and yet my life is not the same if it doesn't exist.
I think we can all agree with that last statement. Not just Elaine and I, but people in the community, right?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Beautiful thing. Okay. Oh, I need to wake up. Most people in the Flesh and Blood community will know your work as a commentator for Flesh and Blood. You've done some work in the United Kingdom scene, the UK scene, but also at an international level with Europe and, of course, Worlds as well. How does it feel to be such a key part of bringing the game of Flesh and Blood to life to the audience?
I think if that ever feels normal, I should retire. It's probably the way to put it. It's incredibly surreal. I don't know. I don't think anyone ever expects to have the opportunity to kind of make so many people's days better, but I get to do that by stepping in front of a camera and talking about something I care about maybe a little too much. And the fact that people want to listen to me waffle and enjoy that atmosphere, it feels incredible. I think if you asked me if I would be willing to cast an event every day, I would agree for the first 24. I think on day 25, my body might start disagreeing, but my mental is probably still there, and I think that is pretty telling of just how special being able to do that is. So.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Casting is exhausting, and it's very long days. It's not an easy thing, so...
Well, I appreciate that.
You do a great job at it.
Thank you. That means a lot, and it was definitely very surreal this last time around with the world premiere in Prague. It was definitely the biggest event I've had the pleasure of working on, and I mean, the public outpour for that was just incredible. Like, when people are sharing that they're unfortunately in hospital, you've made their surgery day better because they're able to kind of watch you from their hospital bed, or like this kind of, what other career could I possibly do where I get to see that and just like incidentally make people's day better? And yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, wind me up and let me go. If that's the side effect of me casting, I will cast for as much time as you'll give me, because clearly the world's a bit better because I am. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's so wholesome.
Nice.
I know.
Now, let's shift from kind of this kind of verbal audio experience? I don't know. Let's just talk about your writing, okay? So, I first discovered you from your writing, I guess. Through social media, mainly, and seeing links to your writing. But that's like the first content I knew you to kind of have. You've been a writer for TCG Player for a little while now, writing for a variety of card games that obviously also includes Flesh and Blood. What is it about the writing medium that draws you to it? How does it differ as a content creation compared to something like video gameplay or video deck lists or these kind of YouTube content things that we usually see in Flesh and Blood?
It differs quite a bit. I've had the pleasure of doing both. I think there'll be a few people in the Flesh and Blood community who are lucky enough to know me from my Marvel Snap Zone days, where I was the face of the YouTube channel for the largest Marvel Snap fan site on the planet, which was a very unique experience. I kind of ended up there entirely by accident, but like video content was my day job in that space, and that was a lot more exhausting. I guess there's a lot more recognition as well, because I would just get stopped randomly in places from time to time, which was cool and also terrifying. But I find that content like that is arguably a little less personal, because you're a bit more of a slave to the algorithm if you want to find commercial success. And when you're working on the video platforms, there's just so much competition at this point in time. Like, everybody has a phone in their pocket, everyone has access to a camera, and wants to be an influencer to some extent, maybe not, but you know what I mean. And it means that if you kind of want to treat it like a job, you've got to, I guess, kill your darlings a bit more, is probably the truth. The written medium for me, I kind of stumbled into it by accident as well, truthfully, but it's been significantly more, I'm able to work on my own cadence and speak more as myself, as opposed to feeling like I need to produce something for the sake of producing it. Like, when it was video content, you know, the company I was working for had expectations, certain things had to be created, and so on and so forth. And while that's still the case now at TCG Player, I'm in a spot where I'm deemed to be a subject matter specialist on a lot of the games that I work on, so I should be the one who knows what people want to read right now. So I'm just kind of given that trust and given that belief, which means there's a lot less second guessing. I get to, you know, leave in horrid dad jokes, or like, you know, maybe the odd quip and bit of humor that I really, you know, shouldn't if it was all about the numbers. But that means I get to create something that's a bit more personable. It feels like it's less of a brand speaking to you. Instead, it feels more like it's me speaking to you, and that's just more appealing for me in the content space. I'm less interested in being a victim of the machine if I can help it.
Oh, I find that really fascinating and like a really interesting perspective. Yeah.
Happy to oblige, I suppose.
I like. Yeah, it's just funny. I mean, we talked a little bit about like our like writing style differences. Of course, my writing style is very bleak and boring, and I just like, writing is not where I find myself being able to express creativity. So I just find it fascinating when I can hear from people who are different than me.
I think that comes from a place of like, what you're doing is incredible work, but it's also very factual, as you kind of alluded to yourself, which to an extent there's less room to be creative with that, because you can't tell a story necessarily in the same way. You definitely can't manipulate those facts, because that would be misleading. So you're kind of just presenting information, whereas, you know, I get to spit lyrical about a cool fantasy hero, which is way easier to waffle about and give you like opinions on, as opposed to like cold hard evidence. So I think the writing medium is definitely still great for things that are factual, but it's very much like an industry by industry thing, as opposed to just like the global YouTube thing, which is maybe a bit more of a problem. So.
Yeah, interesting.
Writing's also hard. Like, it's so much more difficult to capture people's attention spans with writing compared to a video. You know, so many of us, I imagine, are slaves to the short form content, whatever, right? I guess it's been long enough now that a lot of people don't know that I started my content creation journey in Flesh and Blood through writing as well. Yeah, it's a very long time ago now. I haven't done it for a very long time, but like, it's hard to be interesting and get people to read that and want to read your stuff. But it's also pretty rewarding.
Totally.
I guess. And also, like, if you're the kind of person that hates your own voice, you don't have to worry about that in writing. That's so good.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, to some extent you can kind of separate the personal a bit, which I think helps some people as well. There's a lot less recognizability in written work, because, well, no one ever has to acknowledge it was you if they don't check out the username at the top of the article or anything. I think that helps to some extent. So yeah, it's not easy, but I love it. And I find my own ways to make my articles my own, and that's just come with practice, truthfully. It just takes a bit of practice to learn how to hack it down to a readable size and not lose all of yourself in that at the same time.
No, for sure. Like when I was reading your articles last night specifically for an upcoming segment on this episode, it did feel like I was kind of like, just realistically, I like was reading it in your voice. Like I'd heard your voice enough times to kind of know how you'd say things or assume how you'd say things. And it definitely felt like you were conversing to me. I was gonna say we were conversing, but like I wasn't saying anything.
Weird conversation.
But it did feel like you were conversing to me, telling me about it. It did feel like it was you writing. And like I don't know how much of that I attribute to knowing that you wrote them, because I literally was searching through your profile on TCG Player for your articles. But yeah, your personal... For somebody with a theater degree, I should speak better. Your personality definitely shows through on those articles, and it's a great thing to see. And it was fun.
I appreciate that very much. That's always kind of the goal. I've always aimed for this like vibe of I want to sound like I'm telling you a story around the campfire. And that's the kind of vibe I want to go for in my written work. And if I'm achieving that, and it sounds like me, and it sounds a bit more cozy and personable, then I'm ticking all my own personal boxes. So I'm chuffed with that.
As an aside, it's also a really nice touch that you have a little bit of lore about each of the heroes before you start going on about their deck list.
Doing that for the Living Legend Archive stuff. Yeah. If you give me any excuse to talk about lore, I will. And it's like maybe the most common complaint I get from editorial is just like, that's way too long. And I'm like, yeah, but it's cool though. So, come on now. Like, come on. And yeah, they budge eventually. But yeah, it's definitely one that gets pulled up quite a bit.
Have they ever read a recipe? Like, you need to go into your grandmother's, like, backstory on the mountain in the cold winter before you start talking about how to make a slice of garlic.
You are totally right, and yet, if I made that argument, I would get fired. So, like, it's 100% correct, and yeah, I'm not doing that, because that would be suicidal.
Shall we switch it up from the content a little bit? So, this is a fairly gender-focused pod, or at least partially, it's kind of why we exist, I guess. Non-binary identity is something that we're all still learning about. By definition, there's so many ways for the non-binary identity to exist within people or communities. In your case, you're using he, they pronouns. How has your journey with gender come into play in regards to your TCG life? Have you had any sorts of issues being a part of the TCG community in relation to your gender identity? Conversely, have there been parts of your life in trading card games that have empowered you outside of the community?
So I guess for clarity, I'm not going to assume everybody's been following my journey, because why would you be doing that? But gender identity is I'm going to say a fairly new topic to me. It's not really. It's been something I've kind of been more aggressively tackling over the last 2 years for numerous reasons. I went through some personal trauma, wasn't necessarily happy with where I was in the grand scheme of things, and it just kind of led to a lot of exploration from there and a lot of questions, which I think is truthfully how that begins for a number of people. And I think as someone who is... I refer to myself as gender fluid loosely because I tend to move around in how I feel pretty fluidly, but it's more I have to make concessions to the more common feelings in order to not like constantly in a bad headspace. Like, I get a lot of questions about the beard, for example, and it's like, yeah, I still do a lot of feminine things, but I wake up on more days wishing I had this than days that I don't. So even on the days that I don't, I shouldn't like have a panic attack and cut it away, because if I do, then I will have worse days on average. And that's kind of been the learning experience there in writing that line. But I just kind of found when I started exploring the space and trying to understand, there's not a lot of primarily masked non-binary people that I could find in the space, truthfully. And that wasn't great for my mental health at all. I think it definitely kind of leads you to feeling you're a bit more of an outcast, maybe a bit more of a freak, to use abrasive words. And I bawled it away for ages. It was like, no, okay, we can't acknowledge this publicly. It's just going to cause all kinds of trouble. And I think the more I bawled it, the more I just kind of slowly realized that maybe I wasn't finding representation that looked like me because every single person who felt the same way was doing the exact same thing I was in that moment and bottling it and refusing to publicly acknowledge it. And at that point, I kind of realized that, I was gaining a bit of momentum. I have some amount of public recognizability, and if anyone needs to break that mold and be open and upfront and honest about that so people can actually discover themselves and figure that stuff out, it has to be me. Because people are following along and they want to see a figurehead, and I'm lucky enough to be in that position to arguably be one. And that kind of led to that journey expediting quite a bit, I think. I've been doing a lot of self-discovery over the last 12 months. And it has caused its fair share of hiccups. I always got some amount of hate mail, and I definitely get more now, but it's hard to know how much of that is necessarily because I am bigger now versus more public in the way I identify now. So it's hard to... Yes, maybe not all of it's hard to attribute. Some of it's very obvious to attribute. It's a bit targeted, but it's hard to know for sure how much of that is because of my gender identity. So I don't really know how many problems it is directly caused. But some, definitely some. But in the same way, it's allowed me to, find groups of people like yourselves that I don't think I would have had the confidence to speak to before. And that's made these journeys significantly better as a result and led to further exploration, which is just a lot more than I could have asked for 12 months ago when I was bottling it up and calling myself broken, for lack of a better phrase. So yeah, it's been somehow revolving around TCGs and yet has nothing to do with them in any way whatsoever, and that's kind of weird in its own right?
Like, for me personally, I know that I have met so many people within this kind of queer community purely on the basis that I am in the trading card game community. Not necessarily because, like you say, not necessarily because I play the game per se, but because there's a large portion of us within this game, and kind of similarly to yourself, I put myself out there, and that kind of drew more people in at a time when there wasn't very many of us publicly facing in the community, or at least in the online sense. It was a much smaller time back in the day. So yeah, I definitely kind of understand that portion of it kind of growing and all that, and I guess it kind of just goes in line with the world trending towards more awareness and more discovery of these identities existing. So has our trading card game space.
I think so. I think there's some amount of truth in the fact that the tabletop gaming space has always kind of attracted people who are, I guess, societal outcasts, for a lack of a more polite phrase. There's always been that nerd culture of D&D players in their mum's basement kind of vibe, and that's always kind of cultivated people who don't feel like they belong anywhere else. And for better or worse, that does include the queer community, who quite often feel the same way. And so we do find them naturally gravitating to a place where they may feel like they're more likely to be accepted, and usually are. And I don't think that's necessarily something people click to immediately, but there's definitely a positive correlation there, and thankfully it's a positive one in the literal sense too.
That was a beautiful answer. Yeah, I kind of hope more people kind of talk about this later on.
I hope so. I guess for the record, if anyone ever wants to talk about it, come and bug me, because otherwise I'll just recede into a corner and be all shy and stuff again. So if you want public conversations, provoke me, and I'll absolutely talk about it till the cows come home. So.
Okay. We generally, we're in the process of trying to do different segments for each of our guests. And last night, I decided that maybe we should see how well you know your own.
This is a terrifying concept. I write so much stuff, and I'm like, what archives are you going to have pulled this from? We're going to find out.
We will find out. So I have a series of quotes here from your own writing. I literally have not changed any of them. I just went copy paste, so it's literally your writing. And we want to see if you can figure out what or who you were talking about at the time.
Okay, let's see. I'll give it a go. We'll see how. I'm hoping to bat maybe 50%. Any better than that, I'll be happy with.
Okay. Well, there's 5 quotes here, so
2.5. Let's go.
It's either If anyone can make it happen, it might be you. Okay. I think I've ordered these, again, from easiest to hardest. I tried to get some that are pretty obvious. I tried to get one that's pretty obvious. Okay, let's give this a go. So, the first quote is, "This iconic helm from Welcome to Wraith threatens to draw an additional card each turn, and that's a huge boon to an aggressive deck."
I'm going to hope that's Mask of Momentum, otherwise I'm very...
Yep, that was Mask of
Alright.
Momentum. Yeah. It was in your center article. Your most recent one about how to build it.
Not that you need my help with that.
I need help with all the deck building. I'm not good at it. Okay. So, the next quote is, "As that story is told, players become wizard mains, air quotes, or members of the Azalea cult, air quotes, because they're proud to be associated with the hero they play." Which hero were you writing about?
That was one of the more recent publications. That would have been the article about Viscerai leaving Classic Constructed just now. So, Viscerai Runeblood.
It was Viscerai.
On a roll.
I think I saw you were talking about wizards and Azalea, and I was like, this is a little red herring here.
Thankfully, that one was like somewhat recent, so it's like still easy to pull. But yeah, otherwise I might have thrown it.
You only need to get like half of one correct now to hit your goal. Yeah.
Okay, time to
It does
ball
get a little
it,
bit
folks.
harder
Let's see
here.
how we get.
Okay, so your third quote. "Don't fall into the trap of always keeping your full hand just to do the thing," air quotes.
Oh, well, that describes about half of Flesh and Blood. Who would I have said a whole hand? Who does the thing? Starvo does the thing. Starvo does the thing. That's the way I'll refer to Starvo's hero ability. So
Starvo does do the thing. That was Starvo.
what do I refer to as the thing? And I'm like, oh yeah, the Yahtzee moment where I show you 3 elements. That's what I refer to.
You've done it. You've surpassed your goal.
Absolutely. I can now ruin and screw up these last 2 beyond belief, so it's okay. We're good.
I was gonna say, like, in my community, you reveal Exodia.
That's
when
true,
You
yeah.
show the 3 elements.
That works.
Okay, your fourth quote. "Overall, the deck is playable out of the box and has a clear, concise upgrade plan that helps to make it a great fit for any new player."
Oh, that's an Armory deck upgrade guide, but who knows which one? Oh no, I've written a lot of those. One's not out yet, so it won't be that one. I'm gonna guess maybe Arbitrady.
I'm so mean. This was a One Piece Big Mom Pirates
God damn.
starter deck.
Okay, I'll forgive myself for missing that one. I did not realize this was a One Piece podcast. I have been bait and switched by the hosts. Embarrassed on the internet. Unfortunate.
I was just saying if you would recognize, because like I was just like looking through the thing, I'm like, 20 starter decks. I'm like, which one sounds not like a One Piece deck? And almost all of them made reference to the One Piece character that like is built around, except for this one that I found. I'm like, okay.
I don't think I'd ever have pulled that. My brain was like solely on Fab articles, so yeah, there's no way I pulled that one out.
That was tricky.
I like it.
It was so generic as well.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
I was like, what? The only upgrade content I write for Fab is an Armory deck upgrade guide. Surely it's one of those. No. Bait and switch.
Okay, the last one I promise is Flesh and Blood related. It was just that one that wasn't. So the last one is, after a handful of games, I think this deck is criminally slept on. It's an aggressive shell with some exceptional burst turns, but it's very capable of switching up the plan because of how well many of your cards block.
That sounds like something I would have said about Syndra in recent memory, so I'm going to guess maybe we're back on the Syndra article again, but...
Is that
I'll go with Syndra, yeah. I'm happy to be wrong.
This was an article from January 2024 about Max Nitro. Or specifically, like, about your choice of decks for the...
Well, yeah, it would have been Worlds. I almost played Max at Worlds, you're right. Yeah. What do you mean January 2024? That's a different timeline. I don't remember what I did last Tuesday. Chance up fully. I still mostly agree with that. He's admittedly lost a little bit of his burst turns in the face of, no high octane anymore, but hopefully the Armory deck will fix that in the near future and that article will sound believable again. No, good night.
Hopefully. I mean, like, the weapon is great. Also, the upside is most people aren't going to be going back over a year to find an article about a Worlds that's already happened to find about.
Oh, you would be surprised. People like to make me look very dumb. I will regularly get messages or quotes from old articles and be like, look at how bad it has aged. I'm like, well, yeah, the set hadn't released. Like, yeah, what do you expect from me? But that's part of the job. People love to go archive diving. It's I've started alluding to it in the odd article every now and then where I'm like, here's an opinion you can quote me on later, because I might as well let them all F to search for it as opposed to clicking through the article.
At least then you have some control over what people are going to roast.
Yeah, exactly. You got to take your small wins where you can get them.
Hopefully they quote you the right games, though.
You know what? I really should have expected that from you, and I totally didn't. My brain was like solely on FAB. I was like, come on, we can do better than 3. We cannot do better than 3. So
you beat the 2.5 though.
We are
Beat the 2.5.
We are batting above average, and I guess that's acceptable.
If you're a basketball player, that's great. 60% is
60% is fantastic as a win rate in Flesh and Blood. So yeah, absolutely, I'll take that as well.
Oh, that's true. Good point. I feel mean for that, but
honestly, that was cool. That's exactly what I would hope somebody would do. Like, the only thing you could have done was like found a quote that was like objectively wrong, and like maybe that would have been the only way to make that worse. And there's definitely some of them out there. So if people want to go digging through my old written work archive, go on, make me look stupid. It's a fun pastime, I promise.
We can like dedicate an episode. We'll just like maybe do some research, find all your wrong quotes, and then you can turn into a song.
I can't wait for Worlds this year where it's like, Scott, we've got 100 quotes from your articles, and do it on a public stage.
That was the segment. Just like, we found a bunch of quotes where you were objectively wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that would be. I mean, I would be curious how many I agreed with, honestly. Like, because there's definitely some of those opinions that I maybe in my heart know are wrong, but I would still fight to the death to tell you that they are true. And yeah, there are definitely some that I'm like, wow, what was I smoking? Wolf, what was going on over there? So yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Oh, goodness.
I don't know how many more guests would have if our episode was just a roast.
A roast?
I mean, depending on what part of the internet you upload on, you might have more. Some people would pay you for that. That's how that works.
If you want to pay us to get roasted, we do accept it. So
we will do that.
Yeah, this was a great experience. I'll even write positive feedback. Don't worry about it. You'll have some bias before you know it.
Oh, goodness. All right, we do have some listener questions today. The first one comes from Alex, Jackai of Scarlet Wind, at deviled3eggs, eggs with a 3, .bsky.social. And Alex has quite a few questions here, but just to get started, Alex says, howdy Scott and Kiki and Elaine. As a person of many talents, what is the process like for switching from player to writer to commentator?
Thank you for the kind words, first of all. That means a lot. Truthfully, I think I do this in a bit of a weird way, and every time I've spoken about this publicly before, I get some real psycho looks, so I apologize if we're about to see some more of those. But I'm a big believer in something they call the Batman effect, which is the idea that you can kind of give yourself alter egos in order to instill confidence in yourself, but also protect yourself from things and maybe a bit damaging or otherwise. And I use that approach pretty heavily when it comes to separating the very distinct things that I do. So commentating, Scott dresses differently, carries himself very differently. You know, the outfit makes the person, helps me put the ego together, and it instills more confidence as a result. I mean, when I'm commentating, I feel like I could punch a dragon and win, you know, because I can kind of bring that mentality to myself. Whereas writer Scott, you know, also dresses differently, acts differently, and has different mannerisms, and so on and so forth through, you know, playing and I guess just Scott, who's in there somewhere. And that kind of helps me dial in when the moments are required, and like be able to pour my focus entirely into what needs to be done today or what I'm intending to do today. A big one really is like when I'm doing public appearances, I'll always have a hat on, because it's a mental trigger for me that if I have the hat on, I'm in public facing mode, and it instills me with some confidence to do public speaking, and I become a little less reserved, and it's just little mental tricks, but it works wonders for me. So that's a large part of that process for me, to kind of switch between multiple roles.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
I agree.
That's nice. I appreciate the people just not being like, "What do you mean, Batman?" It's like, okay, well, you focused on the wrong part of that, but thank you. You know, it's definitely an awkward conversation to have at times. But I would encourage people to look into it if it's the kind of thing you think would benefit you, because it did me the world of good when I first started doing like public speaking, and it really helped me kind of not take some of the criticism so personally as well, because it kind of lets you separate, you know, performance from yourself. So.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not you personally that there's an issue with here in this scenario, right? It's
yeah, it's caster Scott, it's writer Scott, but
yeah.
In the same way, I mean, be warned, it does mean I'm also terrible at taking compliments for exactly the same reason, because no, I'm not a good caster. Caster Scott's a good caster, and it's weird. It gets a bit of a mix there, but if you don't take compliments well anyway, there's literally nothing to lose. So go ahead.
Listeners, you should take compliments. Be kind to yourself.
You
deserve it.
They're absolutely right.
Where are we up to? What do you wish was more openly embraced regarding non-conforming genders in TCG spaces? Florian is our non-binary icon, right?
They might be. I'm not sure where they are canonically. I don't want to assume. But I can totally see that. What do I wish was more embraced in general? I'll probably give a bit of a side grade answer. I wish people were willing to accept that they don't need to understand. I find a lot of what bothers me is that, you know, people are willing to risk being hurt and open themselves up to somebody to express how they feel, who they are, you know, personal choices they might want to make. And the rebuttal to that is always, I don't get it, or I don't understand, or, you know, why would it be that way? And you just don't have to. You don't need to get it. It doesn't need to make sense. It's not your identity in question. All you need to know is that by you taking the consideration required to make that person's life a little easier, you are doing good as opposed to actively doing harm. There is no level of understanding about, you know, what they choose to be or who they are that is required to do that. If you want to dig a little deeper, you can do that. There's plenty of ways to do that innocently and to have those conversations and teach yourself and educate yourself. But if it's something you want to distance yourself from, you don't need to understand. And I wish that was more of a common mindset from people who, you know, just want it to be a card game, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. What a beautiful answer. Our next question comes from Ash Oro at ashoro87.bsky.social. What most inspired you to get where you are today, and why is that person just so dang beautiful?
That's very Ash of Ash to say. I love Ash to bits. For context, Ash is a very long time friend who I met somewhere in the middle of this journey. Who was very much a casual card game player to start with, and I was lucky enough to have a positive influence on and make them jump into more games, get more competitive, travel to more events, and enjoy the wider traveling aspects of that. And I'll give all the credit where credit's due. I don't get the chance to speak to Ash very much anymore. Unfortunately, life has made us part ways, and this is maybe not quite as much of a common communication, but any time I post something vaguely negative on a social media channel, Ash, He's like the first person to be in my comments section and be like, how about this time you did this incredible thing, or this thing about yourself, and positive reinforcement. And it's so much harder to hate yourself when someone else clearly doesn't. And it's very much appreciated. So yes, Ash, give yourself all the compliments you want. You clearly deserve them, and because you've given me many over the years too. And yes, people like yourself are the reason I get up and do this job in the morning, because I mean, the games are cool and everything, but the people are way cooler.
What a wholesome little shout. I know. I'm like, that's very cute and wholesome.
Thank you.
I was gonna jokingly be like, but what makes them beautiful? But like, you just kind of described that, right? Like, that sort of friendship is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. It's its own kind of special vein of magic that, for better or worse, unfortunately, it's been a number of years since I've seen Ash in person, and yet nothing has changed. If we met up tomorrow, it wouldn't feel like a day has passed, and when we get to interact online with each other, we're the same as we have ever been with each other. And it's even more magic than that, really, because Ash is significantly older than me. We realized once on a road trip to an event that we knew all the lyrics to the same songs, but I was listening to them at school discos and he was trying to get laid. And that was a very, very weird experience to realize you're like, well, we listen to the same music for entirely different reasons. But yeah, it's magic in a way that all of that kind of combines into something that just outlasts time, which is really cool. So.
It's beautiful. You said the word magic a lot, and this is gonna segue, I promise. You said magic a lot, and your online tag Howling Minds is a very famous Magic the Gathering card. Darth Prentice, Greg, on our Discord asks, do you think there's room for a Howling Mine effect in Flesh and Blood? And if so, how would it work? A landmark card, perhaps. Also, call your shot. Which TCG that you cover will have the best year in 2025? So, two-part question there. Can you make Howling Mine work in Flesh and Blood?
I would love to, but objectively, I think the closest you're going to get is this round's on me. I don't think you can go much further than allowing both players to draw a card once. I think if you push the limit much further than that, like, can you imagine if every game of Flesh and Blood had a great library of Solana in play for both players? We'd just explode. Like, no one would block and everyone would die, and it would be a pretty awful experience, I think. So I think this round's on me is like maybe the line you can go to for a Howling Mine, and I've definitely not thought about that question before. In terms of which card game I think is going to have the best year, that's, I guess, a bit of a subjective question. I think it depends on what you mean by best year. Is it like a commercial best year? Is it a front-facing best year? There's a couple of different metrics you could maybe measure that on. I think from a financial standpoint, it's probably going to be a game like Lorcana, who kind of has had a very solid first year, is very likely to come into its own and kind of reap the benefits of its longevity and its early work in this year. But I think from a community perspective, and arguably from an event perspective, it's very hard for me to argue that it isn't Flesh and Blood, which sounds like a very biased answer given I'm on a Flesh and Blood podcast. But I'll elaborate. Like, we're just at a point already where so many of our events are set in stone. The community growth over the last 6 months has been nothing short of astronomical. There are some hiccups with that. Prices of staples and everything else become an issue, but those are all signs of just how quickly the player base is thriving, and the sheer demand for those cards has come out of nowhere as a result. We're seeing, the French Discord server is like 128 times the size it was 6 months ago, and it's like when you hear these kind of numbers, it's like, wow, we are going from strength to strength, and national championships are getting bigger across the world. Everyone needs more space. Every RTN I've heard about this season has been huge. And it's hard to argue objectively with the numbers that kind of keep pouring forward that Flesh and Blood is just the place to be. The $1.5 million doesn't hurt either, but
I mean, I'm not touching that $1.5 million.
I might get to look at it, but that's as far as it goes.
Okay, there you have it. Lorcana's going to be the best performing game of 2025.
Absolutely what I said. Quote it, put it in an article, and we can read it back in one of these episodes later on in the future.
And then you need to find out. At which point we'll find out which One Piece deck you were actually talking about during.
Yeah, I can't wait. Why do I do this to myself?
For fun, for everyone else's.
Yeah, someone enjoys it. Somebody.
Well, this seems to be the end of the episode. This is all I've kind of written up for us to talk about today. So let's just talk slightly a bit about you again. How would people find you online, and also where would they find your articles so that they can find things to roast you about?
Absolutely. You can find me on just about every platform imaginable as Howling Minds. My branding is cohesive, or I get fired if it isn't. So regardless of where you may find your social media presence, you can find me as Howling Minds. That includes on TCG Player, where you'll find the majority of my articles. So by all means, go and give me a click there. I cover 8 games currently. It will be 11 in the near future. So regardless of what you enjoy, I will have something for you, and maybe I might be able to introduce you into something else that you enjoy as well. So by all means, go and give them a peek. And I guess beyond that, you can find me as Howling Minds on Discord and the like as well. My inbox is always open if you're the kind of person who's getting into writing and wants a fresh set of eyes to give you critique and feedback, or if you just want to talk about the logistics of the chaotic world that we live in, you're always more than welcome to give me a message. Just bear with me while I get back to you. My life is a bit of a movie sometimes, so bear with.
I was gonna say, you always respond to me faster than I do to you, with the exception of like the time difference. But
I mean, I'll take the compliment where it is. That also might just be because I'm terminally online. But we prefer not to think about that too much if we can get away with it.
Aren't we all? Also, just disclaimer: please don't actually bully Scott. Just
No.
Or if you're going to, at least let me pay you for it.
Let's talk later. Do you have any sort of projects you have coming up? Obviously, there's the NDA we talked about earlier.
Yes, yeah. There's a few that I can kind of allude to. I will be at Pro Tour London, World Tour London. I will be in the main event, so that's going to be fruity. It's been a long time since I've given myself a shot at taking down a Pro Tour, so hopefully that goes well. You can watch along at home or in person. I'm honestly at a good number of premiere events. If you're kind of a card game enjoyer in person, if it's upcoming Disney Lore kind of challenges or Bandai Card Fest and stuff, I end up at a lot of those for work or myself. So by all means, give me a nudge if you're turning up to one. The projects, it's a lot of stuff that's on the back burner for TCG Player right now. I'm on roughly 28 articles a month currently, so it kind of eats most of my output. Truthfully, doesn't leave a lot of room to be creative otherwise, but I will say that if you're hoping to see me back behind the commentary desk, don't worry, I'll be back pretty soon. Beautiful.
And lastly, do you have any other shout outs you want to mention today? Anyone you want to thank? Roast.
Maybe deservedly so. I'll give huge thanks, I guess, to TCG Player, who are lovely in their own way and give me the ability to do this full time for a living. That's a huge shout out. So thank you to everyone I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in the community who has made this honestly my life's work. Thank you to the two of you for inviting me on today. It's been an absolute pleasure to come and chat. And I guess as a final thank you, I'll give a quick thank you to my mother, who is the only person in my life that ever gave me permission to do what I love for a living, and she deserves every chance of praise online whenever I get the chance. So thanks, Mum. I'm not here without you either.
Awesome.
That's really awesome.
We need to send the link of this video to your mother just for the end part at the very bare minimum.
Hey, if you don't, I will. Gotta get those free points. Okay. Like it's Christmas is not that far away, and I gotta get in the good books.
If you're willing to do it, you can do it. That's fine. I'll leave it to you. Okay, so Elaine, how can we find you and your Flesh and Blood accounts online?
You can find me at ehamontree on Bluesky, on X or Twitter, although I don't know why I still mention that place because I'm not really on it. But it's just ehamontree at it's just ehamontree. Like bacon on bush or pork on sugary. It's one word. And I also I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today, Scott. I really enjoyed this. 8 games is such an impressive feat to cover, and you do it so eloquently. And I've loved your involvement in the Flesh and Blood space so far. So this is truly a treasure.
Thank you. And I knew one of you was going to try and make me cry, so thank you. I appreciate it.
I wasn't going to try intentionally, but Elaine beat me to the punch, so I'm not going to. Maybe, we'll see. You can find me on Bluesky at kikibird.bsky.social. Occasionally, you can still find me on Twitter talking about wrestling stuff at kiki_la93. You can, of course, join our Discord. The link will be in the bio, as will all the links to everything that we've talked about here, including Scott's various different accounts, as well as, of course, their TCG player account, so you too can go and read about the wonders of mechs from 2024. It's honestly been a fantastic time having you here. You had some great stories. I feel like I learned a lot about kind of your space and like how writing comes into content creation, how important that kind of is. And also just about people and like the community aspect. You have a really great grasp on how people work in the community, and it's beautiful. The way that you speak so lovingly about people is a very beautiful thing. So very thankful to have had you on here.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to have been here,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that I wasn't completely boring. I will take that.
Oh, no.
No, you're a bundle of energy and joy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see my volume spike every time I laugh, so you're great. But yeah, with that being said, thank you all for watching. Hello to Scott's mom. Hope you have a beautiful day. And to the rest of you, goodbye, and we will see you next time.
Bye.